Yeah, there's a lot going on here. We've got found objects. We've got playing with proportion and big versus small. We've got a little bit of sparkle going on. My partner works in costume design, and she assures me this is appropriately camp for today's discussion. She would also like me to point out that she is available to design your outfit for next year's Met Gala. Quick, I'm going to say a word, and I want you to picture what it means. Remember, we're talking about movies and popular culture, and the word is camp. Got a picture? Okay, now try to describe that picture. Chances are good that you're having difficulty with it. That's because camp, as an aesthetic, tends to be one of those I know it when I see it things. You've seen it and had it pointed out to you, but you've never really stopped to think about what makes something camp. One of the first recorded uses of the term camp in this context comes from 1870 in a letter from crossdresser Frederick Park, and in fact, camp as an aesthetic largely has its origins in the LGBTQ community. The first attempt to define camp was in Christopher Isherwood's 1954 novel, The World in the Evening, in which he wrote, "You're not making fun of it, you're making fun out of it. You're expressing what's basically serious to you in terms of fun and artifice and elegance. Baroque art is basically camp about religion. The ballet is camp about love." In 1964, Susan Sontag would briefly reference Isherwood in her Notes on Camp, in which she wrote, "Camp is esoteric, something of a private code, a badge of identity even, among small urban cliques. To talk about camp is, therefore, to betray it." She then went on to betray camp in grand style for, about 13 pages. Among her numbered notes, she defines camp as the love of the exaggerated, the off, of things being what they are not, adding, "Camp sees everything in quotation marks. It's not a lamp, but a lamp. Not a woman, but a woman." A very eloquent and apt definition, but it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. Much easier to grasp is the 1909 Oxford English Dictionary's definition: ostentatious, exaggerated, affected, theatrical. Or the way so many of my friends like to define it these days, have you ever seen that Batman series from the 1960s?
Now to put Batman under my spell.
I, too, have plans for Batman. And Commissioner Gordon, too.
Oh, good parley, good parley. Thank you, Siren, from the bottom of my burnous.
The sort of nebulous approach to camp that so many people have swirling in their brains may be a major contributor to why adapting the camp of yesterday is so very, very difficult. Generally speaking, there are 3 ways of handling camp. The first is to deny it, loudly proclaim that you are actively removing camp from the discussion and that your take on this material is serious. The second is to declare that camp is part of the fun and lean into it all the while smirking and nodding at the camera and declaring, "We love this thing because it is so bad that it is good." And then there's the third, rarely employed approach. An approach that acknowledges that being frivolous is serious business. An approach that is, in fact, itself camp. The approach that you'll find in 2008's Speed Racer. First, a note. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the way Speed Racer is a positive model for addressing camp. But it should be acknowledged that while the Wachowskis are skilled and powerful filmmakers, they have, shall we say, a complicated history when it comes to cultural appropriation, and in particular, Orientalism. That is, adopting a broadly Asian-influenced aesthetic that doesn't so much communicate an understanding and appreciation of the Asian cultural diaspora as a fascination with it as an exotic other. It's on display in a lot of The Matrix. You can see it in Ninja Assassin, and yikes, that was definitely Yellowface in Cloud Atlas. And, of course, you can find it in Speed Racer. There's a lot of positive to discuss about Speed Racer, and we'll be talking about some of it in this video, but frequently the bad comes along with the good, and it doesn't do us any favors to ignore it. 2008's Speed Racer was not the Wachowskis' first film following the Matrix trilogy, but for all the media attention it got, it might as well have been. Sure, in between they had the box office hit that was V for Vendetta, which set off a generation of anarchists, giving Warner Brothers a fortune in purchases of officially licensed Guy Fawkes masks, and set off Alan Moore's third heart attack. But Speed Racer was the film that was touted as the Wachowskis' return to greatness, as they would be introducing a visual style that would be just as revolutionary as the Matrix's bullet time sequences. Or so the publicity read. The movie itself was a culmination of a long-running development process that had seen Warner Brothers attached publicly to an adaptation of the 60s television series as early as 1992, when Carl Masek's Streamline Pictures used that fact as a bullet point to promote their own Speed Racer the movie that had been created by editing together 4 television episodes. Initially announced as starring Johnny Depp in the title role, and Henry Rollins as his older brother Racer X, that's eerily good casting, guys. The movie had fallen apart after Depp took time off for personal reasons, and director Julian Temple left the project. The movie had existed in a cinematic limbo for years, as Speed Racer hit new popularity with airings in the red-eye time slots on MTV, then dropped out of the public eye yet again. It passed from hand to hand with Gus Van Sant, Alfonso Cuarón, and Hype Williams, all sitting briefly in the director's chair, and screenplays commissioned from Mark Levin, Jennifer Flackett, and J.J. Abrams. But it was the Wachowskis who snapped it up in 2006, hoping that the family-friendly source material would give them a movie that would not be rated R by the MPAA, which would allow them to introduce themselves to a broader, younger audience.
That was a great race you ran, Speed. You beat us fair and square. You're the best driver I've ever seen, Speed.
Oh, thanks.
How would you like to join my team as a professional racer?
Huh? I don't know.
Speed, you could race with all of us in the Grand Prix.
I wish I could.
Yes, folks, I am a professional. This hat doesn't fit, and I am balancing the crap out of it. Now that I've mastered this look, cosplay stardom awaits. Like so much media of the 1960s, including The Avengers, Dark Shadows, and Batman, Speed Racer holds a place of honor in the halls of camp. The American localization of Japan's Mach Go 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 had been undertaken by electronics company briefly turned television distributor Translux. They hired producer Peter Fernandez, who famously wrote the English language dialogue, as well as taking on many of the voice acting roles himself. He was working on a tight schedule without much of a budget, and the episodes had to be edited for content before they could be broadcast in America, so all of the missing plot from the scenes dubbed too violent or disturbing had to be wedged into the dialogue for the remaining scenes, all of which coalesced in an English language dub that audiences found endearingly janky and, at times, unintentionally hilarious. Yes, I said unintentionally. As Sontag noted, the pure examples of camp are unintentional. They are dead serious. The term she uses for this kind of camp is naive camp. That is, camp which is executed effortlessly because the camp is actually in the later consumption, not necessarily in the original intention. Deliberate camp is possible, but it represents a much more delicate balancing act than naive camp. Critics famously savaged Speed Racer when it was released to theaters in 2008. The complaints were uniformly aimed at the look and feel of the movie. It was too bright, too flashy, too much of a cartoon. Jim Emerson gave the movie 1.5 stars, saying that audiences would never mistake it for an avant-garde film unless you still consider Laserium shows of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon to be cutting edge. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone said that the movie was a punishing 135 minutes as the Wachowskis projectile vomit their cotton candy dreams all over the big screen. Dana Stevens of Slate described the movie's style as shapes hurtle toward you, then recede abruptly, each bearing some fragment of narrative information that has now passed you by forever, adding, nausea and anxiety begin to wash over you in overlapping waves. Moira MacDonald for the Seattle Times said, the actors seem lost in a gumball dispenser. Look, the candy metaphors were flying fast and furious with this one, and so were the condescending references to children, with critic after critic panning the movie as trying to appeal to young boys, with the only disagreement being the specific age of the boys. Some said they were 8, some said they were 10, a couple said they were 12. I guess it all comes down to what age represents immaturity to you. Now, Chim Chim, I've told you before, you and Spritel aren't supposed to hide in the trunk anymore, all right? The New York Post's reviewer dabbled in a little bit of smug cultural superiority with their undeniably racist comment, I wondered if there was some parallel universe where it might be considered an entertaining experience. Maybe Japan? And of course it was nominated for the ultimate in ironic accolades, the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Prequel, Remake, Ripoff, or Sequel. The winner that year, by the way, was Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Audiences weren't any kinder to the film on its release. It debuted at number 3 in the box office, just behind Iron Man and the indomitable powerhouse that was What Happens in Vegas, featuring Ashton Kutcher and Cameron I Deserved Better Than This Diaz. With the total cost of the film running around $120 million, Speed Racer grossed only $43 million domestically. The worldwide take was just short of $94 million. The movie was considered a box office bomb.
Sure, Pops, don't be discouraged.
Well, I am. Where'll I get the money I'm going to need?
I admit that I was one of those audience members in 2008. I was stunned by what I saw on screen, and yeah, I wasn't too fond of it at the time. I was hoping for another The Matrix, and I couldn't wrap my head around the onslaught of color and speed lines that I got instead. Also, I had a long-standing crush on Christina Ricci, and I didn't like her costumes. Now I realize that every look in this film is iconic, but I preferred my Christina just a little more Ricci at the time, if you catch my drift. But even before you address how well the film approached its camp roots, it's hard to watch this movie today and not be struck by how much the modern summer blockbuster owes to the Wachowskis' Speed Racer. It's a movie where virtually every shot is an effects shot of one kind or another. A movie where so much that exists on the screen never existed in the physical world, but was instead created by a computer after the filming was done. Speed Racer stumbled so that Guardians of the Galaxy could walk, and Thor Ragnarok could run.
Oh my god, was that a ninja?
More like a nanja. Terrible what passes for a ninja these days.
Cool beans.
The original Speed Racer may have been an example of naive camp, But 2008's Speed Racer is a great example of deliberate camp that captures the feel of the original by respecting what it was. When the Wachowskis set out to make their adaptation, they didn't treat the camp elements as separate from the rest of the work. It wasn't trash to be thrown away, nor was it a funny hat to be pointed at and laughed at. The camp was what it was. The bizarre characters, the combination of breakneck espionage action with wholesome family sports stories, and of course the science fiction race cars straight out of a child's notebook scribbles. These things weren't campy touches stapled onto a story. They were the story. They were the reason that Speed Racer had survived so long. And if you're going to adapt Speed Racer, that's just part of the territory. The original series had a kid and a chimp who liked to stow away in the trunk of Speed's car. Sure, you could cut that out of an adaptation, but why would you, when it's such a big part of the original? You could also try to lampshade it, making fun of it or finding a silly way to wedge it into a serious version of the story. But if you do that, then you're no longer paying homage to the original, you're parodying it. You're parodying a work that was, intentionally or not, already self-parodying. Instead, the Wachowskis just gave us a kid and a chimp who liked to hide in the trunk of a race car. They just gave us a spunky girlfriend who has her own helicopter. They gave us a car that can use its built-in tire jacks to jump over obstacles. They gave us a world rendered in bright colors, where the heroes wear primaries and the villains wear secondaries. They gave us what the original had, without complaining about it or making fun of it, but simply loving it and embracing it. In fact, they gave it to their audience with gusto. In a 2020 interview, the Wachowskis reflected on Speed Racer with fondness, saying that they went into the production understanding the risks they were taking. It was, they explained, an effort to innovate and break out of what they saw as the stale language of film. In an art gallery, you can see paintings and sculptures from very different schools displayed next to each other. But most movies, ultimately, wind up looking the same, especially before 2008. But with advances in computer effects and new digital editing techniques, the Wachowskis wanted to create a new language of editing, and today they call it an attempt at cubist film, a film that, for the first time, could show you two perspectives on a visual subject simultaneously. It is with no attempt at humility that the Wachowskis refer to Speed Racer as their Guernica. And that's the attitude that carries 2008's Speed Racer into camp history along with its 1960s predecessor. Because, to go back to Sontag for one final look into the elements of camp, when something is just bad rather than camp, it's often because it is too mediocre in its ambition. The artist hasn't attempted to do anything really outlandish. It's too much, it's too fantastic, it's not to be believed are standard phrases of camp enthusiasm. The Wachowskis can be accused of a lot when it comes to Speed Racer, but mediocrity isn't among the charges. If you want to see the full photo shoot in this outfit, make certain you subscribe to my OnlyFans. Thanks for checking out the video. While you're here, leave me a comment about your favorite modern take on a campy classic, or just tell me how much you love this helmet. I mean, you gotta admit, this is a look. While you're letting me know any of those things, be sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that bell so that you'll be notified each time there's a new video on the channel. If you're in a good position to help the channel grow financially, just imagine what she can do if she has a budget for costuming. Then make certain that you check out the link below for my Patreon. Until next time, watch like it means something. You want to say anything, add anything to the discussion? I am not Chim Chim, I am Waso X.